to do, YouTube? It's Holy One, and I'm going to be ranking the hardest to easiest Souls games I've played. Starting off this list at number 9, we have Lords of the Fallen. I died a total of 28 times to the bosses, all total bosses in all. We're not including deaths from main enemies. We are counting them from the deaths. Lords of the Fallen is definitely a spin-off from a Souls-like game. But overall, it wasn't too difficult. I managed to get through it. No problem. But, you know, the deaths occurred. The deaths happened. They came in about. I beat the bosses. All of them are right there. So, we're starting this list off at number 9 with the easiest, Lords of the Fallen. Moving on, we have, at number 8, we have Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. And this includes all bosses and all bosses from DLC. And I died a total of 83 times. My videos are uploaded if you guys want to check those out. This is probably the easiest of the 3 main Souls games, as well as any Souls-like game. The reason for that is the game isn't as difficult as what people think. I know it can be difficult with the Estus flasks, but other than that, the combat's pretty easy. For most bosses are pretty predictable. And if you guys have played Dark Souls 2, you'll know what I'm talking about. Overall, some of the DLC bosses could get pretty difficult, but I was still able to squash them, no problem. And you can go back to your base and all this sort of other stuff. So if you guys agree with my choice for number 8 as Dark Souls 2 being the weakest of the links, let me know. I definitely think it is, in my opinion. And yeah, Dark Souls 2 is number 8 for the easiest Souls games. Moving up, things are getting harder. We're going up now to number 7. We have Demon Souls. And in Demon Souls, I died a total of 49 times back on the PlayStation 3. Now, Demon Souls can be tricky at times. It can be difficult. I know most people say, oh, when you die you have to restart, everything like that. But overall, the game wasn't too bad. Enemies were pretty predictable with their attacks and all sorts of things like that. I know I am a hardcore Souls fan, and I don't die as much as people think because I play games on the hardest difficulty, yada yada yada. But overall, the game was really fun and enjoyable, but still not one of the hardest Souls games that I've seen yet. But it still could be very difficult, as I was a newcomer to Souls when I first started playing it. Of course, one of my buddies came in and helped me out with giving me like a really rare item to help me get through it easier. Maybe that's just me getting through it easier. Maybe that's just me or not. Maybe it's an exploit or not, whatever it is. But overall, Demon Souls is at number 7 on our list. So let's move on. Number 6, we have this pain-in-the-ass game, Salt and Sanctuary, a indie Souls-like game that you can play with your friends or just yourself. It is basically a 2D Souls-like game, and the boss attacks are very hard to avoid, and you get hit by them pretty frequently because the bosses can hit you, you know, on a very tiny 2D screen. Now, the game was challenging and fun. I beat it solo and cooperatively. Most people gave up playing this game with me because of how hard it was. Now, I only died 56 times. You're probably saying, oh, 56 times, that's not too bad. But remember, I still struggled on this game. Let's be real. If you want an indie game that's a very difficult Souls-like game, and you're probably going to die hundreds of times, because let's face it, I died 55 times, and that's probably equivalent to like 500 times on a game. But Salt and Sanctuary is definitely a hard-ass indie game. And that's why it's at number 6. And the list here from on out is going to get harder and harder. So let's move on from here. Number 5, we have Cuphead, the 1930s cartoon-looking Souls-like game. Let's be real, this is probably on a lot of people's list. Cuphead is no joke. Literally, this game killed... on my first playthrough, not on expert or anything like that, I died a total of 67 times. Now you're probably thinking, that's not a lot. But after I beat expert and got, like, you know, all the achievements and all that sort of thing, the game easily ranked up to... It could easily rank higher, but we're going based off first playthroughs on boss kills. So Cuphead's at number 5 for sure, and adds a lot of challenge. Even if you want even more challenge, just like in Salt and Sanctuary, you can get co-op in this game and make the game even more difficult for yourself. But don't let the art style fool you. This game is definitely hard, and that's why most people compare it to a Souls-like game. So that's number 5 on my list, which is Cuphead. Moving on the list, we have Bloodborne at number 4. Now, the reason Bloodborne's so high on my list is because Bloodborne is a new way they innovated in Dark Souls. They got rid of your shields, making it more difficult for you to block and parry and all that sort of things. The game is more action-packed, and you can die quicker because, like, you can one-shot enemy might be able to one-shot you. They've added more blood vials overall, but the game is a lot more fast-paced. The bosses are quite difficult. This includes the expansions, where they add a lot more difficult bosses to the game as well, such as Ludwig and so on and so on. Now, if I take all the bosses I played through the first playthrough and the expansion, doing a solo, my videos are up there if you guys want to watch them, I died a total of 74 times, so that ups the death count even above Cuphead on my first playthrough. So, Bloodborne was definitely a satisfying PlayStation 4 exclusive, and it's pretty high on my list because it was pretty difficult, and I'm not gonna lie. Alright, moving up the list we have 3 is Dark Souls Prepare to Die Edition. The first Dark Souls I played, and my first run through on PS3, I died a total of 90 times. Or 92, my bad. This game was hard. I know they made it easier in Dark Souls 2 with the whole system and like that, but this is still by far one of the hardest Souls games when it comes to bosses, enemies, all that sort of stuff. This is definitely one of the hardest Souls games. Dark Souls 1 will always be one of my favorite Souls games to play. It'll go down as one of the hardest. Getting my ass kicked by the bosses was gratifying and satisfying and all that sort of stuff. So this is probably on most people's lists as the hardest, and that definitely goes for Dark Souls 1. Alright, moving up the list. Number 2 is Dark Souls 3. Now, the reason Dark Souls 3 is so high on my list is not only did I die 126 times in this game, that's including the both expansions, Edrian, the Painting World, basically the Painting World boss, and the Snowing Region bosses. I died a total of 126 times. Now, the reason this game is so difficult is the PvE, the player versus player, that got harder because people can spam Estus flasks. The bosses are much more difficult in this game. Some are very easy, some are very hard. They basically took the quick gameplay from Bloodborne, added it into this Souls game, said, hey, let's add the shielding mechanics from the other games, so not only is it fast and difficult like the other Souls games, but on top of that, that adds more to the difficulty. Now, I like that. The player versus player is kind of garbage, but them adding those features into Dark Souls 3 definitely made it a lot more difficult. For crying out loud, the first boss, he comes back later on, kind of like in the first Dark Souls where you fight the Stray Dragon. He comes back even more difficult. This dude right here, he comes back even more pain in the ass. In an alternate world, Gungnir. Most people won't even get past this guy and rage quit the game. I, on the other hand, of course, killed him without dying. That was my first playthrough. But other than that, Dark Souls 3 is definitely number 2. Now we're going to move on to the hardest game I have played that is a Souls game that killed me, tortured me the most, and made me want to quit right after playing it. Number 1 is Neo Complete Edition. This includes all the DLC, all 3 expansions I beat, and 100% of this game. This is by far the hardest game. By far. I died on my first playthrough, I died a total of 191 times. Now the combat is like take Ninja Gaiden, then add Dark Souls to it, and you get a very hard game like that. The game just gets even harder than that. The gameplay is unique. It's very quick. It's like run or die. You'll basically die in one hit or not. I put 400 hours in this game. I've beaten all the new game pluses, highest difficulties, all that, you name it. I have 100% of it. pretty much. Got the best builds. There's so many builds you can do, so many uniqueness to it. The game can be pretty complex compared to the other games, for sure. And that's what makes this game so much fun. It's my #1 most hard game, but it's also my most favorite game, for sure. And that's why I like it so much. So Nihon is #1 on my list. Let me know what your guys' most hardest game is down in the comments below. And this is your boy One. Out!